Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy, and we are here for an awesome insider episode. I have the CTOs from NVIDIA and VMware, and this is going to be awesome. We're going to be talking about the accelerated data center, looking under the hood. I guarantee you this is going to be nerdy, but also extremely beneficial to CIOs and everybody in that group. So let me first start off and introduce Michael and Kit. How are you guys doing?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so hey, rather than me kind of butcher your bios, maybe Kit, you can introduce yourself, and Michael, talk about what you do as well.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll jump in first here. So Kit Colbert, CTO for VMware, newly minted CTO. I've been in the role now about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And yet I've been at VMware for about 18 years. So done a lot of different things over that time, but over the past few years, been focused on our core cloud infrastructure offerings and very much working closely with NVIDIA. So while I'm coming into this as in a new role, I've actually had a very long relationship with NVIDIA. So a lot of really exciting things to talk about today.
Yeah, it was great touching base with you at VMworld. That was a lot of fun. Intern to CTO, I love that. It's a great story.
Yep.
Michael, how about you?
Yeah, hi, I am Michael Kagan. I am a CTO for NVIDIA since NVIDIA acquired Mellanox, where I also was the CTO of Mellanox and one of the co-founders. And before that, I was at Intel managing the processors and designing the processors. So now I'm sort of, closing the circle, going back to the company that is making the state-of-the-art vector processors and state-of-the-art software to make them useful. So we have worked with NVIDIA and Mellanox days for maybe a decade, and it is very natural partnership, and it was very natural partnership and very natural acquisition. And I'm pretty excited to be in my role. Still feel like drinking from the fire hose. It's a very technology-rich company, but it's very exciting, and we are indeed making a difference.
Yeah, so it's great to have all of you guys here. So let's just jump right in. But for the audience, maybe we can give a little bit of background on the VMware and NVIDIA partnership. There's been a lot of announcements. There's been a lot of alignments as of late. And maybe, Michael, we can start with you.
Yeah. Well, basically, the artificial intelligence becomes the basic platform to deliver services. And it is a new type of computing, a new type of operation. So it needs to be brought to a much wider audience, and everything, well, the changes now getting faster and faster. And what we are doing together, VMware and NVIDIA, we are bringing the AI to the enterprise as the turnkey solution. So enterprise CIOs and data center manager don't need to deal with this complexity of data management, data preparing, and so on and so forth. It's a turnkey solution from VMware and NVIDIA together. It works for private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud. And in NVIDIA, we are also maintaining the pre-trained AI models for people to use, as well as quite a lot of software that makes all these things operational and useful. So this is NVIDIA Enterprise AI with the conjunction of VMware vSphere, is basically giving the turnkey solution.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I hear a lot of from customers is this focus on AI and ML. And we've worked with customers for many years doing this. And what we realized was that it was harder than maybe it should have been to actually do AI and ML in the enterprise. We saw a lot of customers with these silos of infrastructure set up specially by whatever team was working on it. And it was difficult to bring a lot of the benefits that the enterprise saw in other areas of their IT infrastructure to these spaces. And so that's why I think the partnership here is so special, because we really are democratizing AI and ML, making it so much easier for folks to get access to these really differentiated capabilities, both hardware and software, and then using that to propel their business forward. And so when we look at what we're doing, this notion of the AI-ready enterprise platform, this notion of taking best-of-breed GPUs from NVIDIA, really powerful infrastructure software and management software from VMware. And then, of course, as Michael just mentioned, all these great pre-trained models, this ability to really get started very, very quickly, also there from NVIDIA. I think it's a really powerful stack. And so this is something we've been working on for quite a while, continuing to tighten the integration between our respective products and capabilities. And we've really, I think, hit a new threshold here where it's easier than ever to get started and I should say, to accelerate your AI and ML strategies.
Yeah, I know for certain that a lot of enterprises who had substantial on-prem capabilities, and even those looking at the hybrid cloud, are really glad to see the two of you combining your superpowers for the good of AI, because it's really a lot better if the capability is in the public cloud, but also in the hybrid cloud. So, hey, let's get off start here. I'm going to ask you kind of the shocker question, which is, what do you think is the single most dramatic change happening today that kind of converted the data center into this new unit of computing?
Michael, you want to start?
Go ahead.
Well, I think, I certainly see many, many fundamental changes happening. I think one of the biggest things is this notion of as a service, cloud service capabilities. Because what it's done is it's fundamentally shifted the operational model. And I think this is what we see when we talk to customers, is that a lot of them, they want the ease of public cloud and the ability just to go click a button and get something, but they find it hard to replicate that back on-prem. And I think this is some of what we saw, early on. Individual teams, as I mentioned, going out and just doing whatever they needed to do was very manual and cumbersome, but they wanted a quick and easy button. And so I think this is the big thing that we're trying to architect together with NVIDIA, this notion of making the access so simple that it's just, a set of API calls and that it can be automated. And that can fundamentally accelerate the work that you're doing in the AI and ML space.
Yeah, I agree absolutely with what you're saying. On the sort of level is that AI, basically, it's the HPC applications. It's supercomputing application. It used to be something that you could run on a single GPU or at the beginning even single CPU, but now the model grows and the execution and the requirements are growing. So actually now the model spans multiple compute nodes, which makes it to be the HPC application. And HPC run on supercomputers, and now we need to make a supercomputer to be a service in the cloud, and not just a big machine that people log in and execute their programs. So making a supercomputer to be a cloud service, this is the big and significant change in the computing infrastructure per se, and basically bringing the abstraction one level up, or bringing the user one level further from the real hardware and the real system. And it's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what you guys are talking about is making on-prem as easy as the public cloud, right? And whether, API-driven abstraction, making it easier. So,
and by the way, on that note, if you don't mind me interrupting real quick.
No, please, this is a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely see that. The reality is that we are living in a very, very distributed world. We talk a lot about this notion of multi-cloud. And when we say multi-cloud, we don't just mean the public clouds. We mean on-prem data centers, we mean edge locations. And the more I talk to customers, the clearer it is that we're only going to see, continued distribution of workloads, that we need to get the applications near to the data, near to the things that are out there generating that data, near to the users that need to consume that data. And so you're going to see that this very large and varied topology. And so we need to ensure that we have the right sorts of hardware and infrastructure capabilities at all of those locations to support those applications.
Right. That's exactly. This is the new unit of computing that is scalable from, hunger scale installations all the way to the edge, to autonomous car, at some point to the IoT devices.
Yeah, for sure. So, with that said, how should CIOs be looking at AI, and not as part in the research group where it started, what, 5, 6, 7 years ago inside of major companies, but part of the fabric, part of the approved IT infrastructure that can hit, all of the lines of businesses, each side in each company. And maybe Michael, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so first of all, I advise not to look at this with fear. It's not, it's not that bad. It's actually really cool, and it is the competitive advantage. You can make it a competitive advantage if you take advantage of the AI. It is pretty much the way of life, and what I would advise to do is to start with the turnkey solutions or close to turnkey solutions from like VMware and NVIDIA are doing, and innovate on top of it. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, although it may be tempting sometimes, but just take the most advanced and most developed environment and framework and start from there. We have a lot of investment that we have done on the model topologies, training the models. It takes months to train a large models, and it will be all available to our customers from the NVIDIA repository.
Yeah, Kit, how about you? Words of wisdom. I mean, you've been in enterprises as long as VMware has been a company, and you're a very trusted partner that essentially most of their applications are running on today.
Yeah, and like I completely agree with Michael. Like I see AI and ML as just a huge opportunity for folks. And look, I think as we talked about, we're trying to break down the barriers to get there. The reality is you probably already have a bunch of data within your environment, so how can you start taking advantage of that? And to Michael's point, this is something I hear again and again. People are looking for solutions, right? If you're going out and trying to reinvent the whole world yourself, your competitors are going to blow you by, right? And so this notion of getting something tried and true, mature, ready to roll is a really important aspect of that. The other piece, when I go back to that notion of democratizing AI, is around the models and the training of those models. As Michael mentioned, this can be a quite laborious, cumbersome, and kind of uncertain process, right? You got to try to figure out a bunch of different variables and so forth. And so if you can take ones that have already been pre-created for you, it can actually help to dramatically accelerate and actually open it up so that more folks within your organization are able to take advantage of this. It's not just, the hugely specially trained data scientists, but it is that notion of democratization, enabling a broader set of users to start seeing value from this.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is double click one step further, and literally how should enterprises be rethinking applications in reference to CPUs, GPUs, and this new term that NVIDIA has coined, the DPU?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, and then Michael, you can take over after. So the DPU is a really, really exciting new piece of technology. In fact, I would say after the GPU, like another one that's kind of just a fundamental inflection point in the architecture of servers. So what the DPU is essentially an evolution of the NIC, that you have a NIC, but now you've got a general purpose CPU and really like little server, you can think of it, running on the NIC, like in the NIC essentially. And this allows you to do a number of really interesting things. It allows you to get performance benefits from doing things like offload to the NIC. It allows you to get things like manageability benefits from now having a separate place you can manage that's separate from the main board processor. It allows you to get security benefits. And so, the list kind of goes on and on here. And so I think it's a real fundamental architecture shift. It's something that we are, all over in terms of VMware. We have a project called Project Monterey, which is a kind of a re-architecture of our hypervisor to take advantage of this. So, it's clear that servers will benefit and customers will benefit tremendously from this. but how should apps be thinking differently about this? And I
Yeah.
do think that, as we see all these new hardware capabilities come to the forefront and get democratized, as I mentioned, we got to make it very easy to take advantage of this stuff. What we're going to see is a fundamental re-architecture of the application as well. That an application today running on a single server is considered kind of a single instance, right? And then you kind of get distribution running across many servers. But what we're going to be able to see is actually a distributed application, sometimes within a single server, running on different parts of that server, right? You're going to have some parts running on the CPU, some parts on the GPU, some parts on the DPU. And in fact, we even see that today, right, between the CPU and GPU. And so what this is going to enable is application developers to take advantage of these hardware capabilities to get much accelerated performance and some of these other capabilities that we just talked about. So I think we're just starting to scrape the surface of what we can do here, but it's a really, really exciting time, especially as we move toward this era of modern applications.
Yeah, that's very, very, very good points. And look at the GPU, CPU, and the DPU. As Kip mentioned, DPU is a new kid in town, and it's actually part of this new architecture of data center being unit of computing. DPU is actually the infrastructure computing platform. This is where the operating system of this data center computer runs. And Project Monterey is actually porting the VMware, which is the operating system of the data center, to the infrastructure computing tier, which is DPU, where it will run in fully isolated and a secure model, basically, zero trust security and full hardware isolation. And in terms of maintenance, it's also much more convenient because you need to update your infrastructure software. You don't need to touch your application processors and so on. So you look at the data center computer, it has actually three tiers. It has application tier, it has infrastructure tier, and it has acceleration tier. And these tiers are what we are moving forward is that they are basically these sort of amorphic pools of resources that can be software configured and software defined and hardware accelerated. So you run your part of your application, as Kit mentioned, you can run some of it on the DPU, some of it on the GPU, some of it on the CPU. You will run it, you will run parts of the application in the place where it's most efficient in terms of performance, return on investment, and not less important is predictability of the execution. We are talking about the real-time services, and you need to have a clear SLA how long does it take of each portion of the application to run. So all this together, that's the new computer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty powerful. A lot of the points that you just raised. I do
Are there
completely.
is there anything that CIOs, like if we could pull this up just a notch, is there anything, I mean, if there was one thing that a CIO needed to know about a DPU, what do you think it would be?
That's the infrastructure computing platform that provides security. This is the platform where OS and services run. And this is what makes this computer to be software defined and hardware accelerated.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it's the next generation of infrastructure architecture, quite frankly. And, you know, for all the points that we just made around the security benefits, the manageability and maintenance benefits, the performance benefits, like this is, I strongly believe going to be the standard server architecture going forward. And like Michael mentioned, like I think there's a really important aspect of the control point shifting as well. And so this goes back to manageability. This goes back to security. And so we don't need to get into, all the technical details at the CIO level, but the CIO should be aware this is a fundamental transition, and in fact, not making it adds enterprise risk. In the sense of, can your server architectures keep up with these new applications that are very, very data hungry, that are very performance intensive? Are you at greater risk from a security perspective, right? Security is very much top of mind to pretty much everyone I talk to, CIO or otherwise. And so, you just look at this fundamental architecture, and I do think it goes back to an architectural argument that this is just the better way to structure a system.
Yeah, hey, I know I'm the one asking questions, but I have some opinions on this as well. I mean, to me, the DPU is a huge enabler for the re-architecture of the data center, putting workloads where they are best used, being able to separate data and separate workloads from a security standpoint is huge. And it's funny from a risk standpoint. I'm like, well, a lot of the hyperscalers, that's their architecture already. So this is not science fiction. This is not witchcraft. This is not, stuck in the CTO office of research. It's a real thing, and people are doing this. So I want to move on to this notion of an accelerated data center. And I don't know if it was Kit or Michael who talked about this first, but what is an accelerated data center? I know it's related to what we're talking about with CPU, GPU, and DPU, and why is it strategic? Why should it be strategic to CIOs? And maybe, Kit, we can start with you.
They zoomed up on me, so they were ready. Yeah, well, I do think it touches upon a lot of the things that we were just talking about. This notion of really rethinking the data center. You had this traditional model where it was kind of a simple server, you had a motherboard, you had a CPU on there, and then you had some other peripherals connected to that, basic things like networking, storage, etc. But what we've seen is that the opportunity to add additional value, whether it's performance, manageability, security, again, the list goes on, is tremendous. And so when you start looking at this overall data center architecture, taking advantage of these capabilities, it really allows you to sort of rethink not just on a single host basis, as we were talking about, but really at a cluster and data center level. And so one of the things that really excites me about DPUs in particular is this ability to sort of rethink the cluster architecture and to be a bit more dynamic about how we structure those resources. But moreover, in general, I think this is, again, a core architecture piece that data centers will need to embrace in order to both reduce security and increase performance, and in general, help the modernization of applications.
Yeah. Well, for me, accelerated data center means it's all about efficiency, ROI, and predictability. So at the end of the day, it's you need to execute the task or workload in the most appropriate place it belongs to. Pretty much, theoretically, you can do everything everywhere. On the first computer book that I opened, it was many years ago, the preface said that everything computer can do can be done by a good clerk if he has enough time. So we better have things done in the place where it makes it to be most efficient and fastest. And that's what accelerated data center is about.
Yep. I mean, especially as we look at like the future in terms of sustainability and a lot of these things, like the amount of physical resources and energy that data centers are using. So I think this notion of efficiency is a really, really important one, and finding essentially the right tool for the right job, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And again, it's not something that's not being done. It's not new. It's just a different way of doing it. And distributing units, as long as you can manage it, is fine. And that was one of the bigger challenge, which is, wait a second, how do I manage? If I'm going to distribute, how do I manage this? And that's where a lot of great software has come into play. So I want to finish this up with a really, time is flying here. I want to finish this up with a really rich conversation about the hybrid cloud. And, it's interesting. And, as industry analysts, I like to do a victory lap for things we get right. And of course, I ignore the stuff that we get wrong. But 10 years ago, my company was talking about, we called it the private cloud that extended to the public cloud. And people thought we were nuts. People thought we were crazy. Now, I bet on the wrong horse, which was OpenStack, but who didn't at the time? But here we are. Nobody is debating the hybrid cloud. You have cloud native companies who are doing the hybrid cloud, and you have classic on-prem folks who are doing the hybrid cloud, and we're just meeting in the middle here. And the two of you have some really incredible conversations with real customers out there. And I'm curious, just to start, how are CIOs investing in their data center strategy to actually make the hybrid cloud a reality versus a strategy or in research. And feel free to plug to your own companies as you go through this. And maybe we'll start, Michael, with you.
Oh, okay. Well,
We can start with Kit too. It doesn't matter.
Go for it, Michael.
Go ahead.
I started the last one. I feel like we're trading off here,
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, we talked about this computing that needs to be done everywhere, and you need to move computing to the data or data to the computing, and therefore you cannot rely on your workloads to be run in a single place, and it is better off to have the same environment and safe running on the same computer architecture. So therefore, you really need to be able to move your workloads from your enterprise data center to the edge, and this edge maybe it's actually in the home of your employees. It can be everywhere. So and of course there's also big workloads like simulations that you may want to use the big public clouds providers for computing and storage to cover for peak requirements of your enterprise. So cloud native is the way to go. It's like 30 years ago you would ask whether I need computer at my home. Of course, everybody needs every data center, every CIO needs to think about hybrid cloud.
Michael, what are some of the key NVIDIA building blocks that are enabling the hybrid cloud?
Oh, that's the software infrastructure that we put together, actually together with VMware, to enable this virtualization, and also our repository for the models and the containers to run the applications everywhere.
Excellent. So, Kit, from your point of view, again, how are CIOs investing in their strategies to actually enable this, make it real versus research?
Yep. Yeah. So just as a quick sort of background, the sort of trend we're seeing is that definitely that there are a lot of workloads going to public cloud. People are building in public cloud, but there's a tremendous amount of workloads that are also on-prem, and in fact, that's growing as well. And by on-prem, I'm talking about not just the data center, but of course, edge as well. And edge is being a massive growth area. Some of the data we've seen suggests it's actually growing faster than public cloud. So, because of this, I think when we talk to CIOs, what they're looking at is how do I create an architecture that's consistent across all these different areas, right? They can't have different teams managing every individual location, all with, different infrastructure and different security capabilities and all these sorts of things, right? It's just, there's all sorts of risk and other sorts of problems that you run into there. And so I think that the key there is consistency. And for VMware, in terms of our infrastructure, that's all about VMware Cloud Foundation. The idea there is it's a core infrastructure building block of virtualized compute, storage, network, and management. And that goes pretty much wherever you want applications to go, in your data center, at the edge, it's in the cloud, with all of the hyperscalers we're partnering with to deliver that there. We have over 4,000 service provider partners. And what we talked about thus far in terms of the AI-ready enterprise platform, our work jointly with NVIDIA, that's about deeply integrating into VMware Cloud Foundation. And to get it such that VMware admins can very easily take advantage and expose all these great NVIDIA capabilities to their end users. And I think the final thing that I would say that we're seeing from the private cloud, hybrid cloud space is the notion of customers taking a lot of these capabilities, or excuse me, a lot of these experiences people have in the public cloud, this notion of self-service, and implementing that on premises. And so we have a number of tools around that, things like vRealize automation that integrate with VMware Cloud Foundation, integrate with NVIDIA, and allow that sort of self-service access to those end users. And the cool part about it is they can get that self-service aspect irrespective of where they want to go, whether that's put an app in the data center, put an app at the edge, put an app in the cloud.
Yeah.
So it just makes it that much easier. It goes back to that democratization term that I used at the beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a lot of debate 10 years ago about the hybrid cloud, and now the debate has shifted to multi-cloud.
Yeah.
I have a feeling just from talking to so many enterprises where I think this is going to end up. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but I think it's up to companies like VMware and NVIDIA to make it easier, because roughly 75% of workloads are still in the data center, and we have been doing the cloud for over a decade, right? So there's something that isn't there, and I'm not a cloud denier for sure, but there's a reason that some of these workloads are still on-prem, and whether it's age, whether it's latency, whether it's control, or something like that, and the fact that a fully burdened data center is going to be less expensive than the public cloud has us all thinking. The challenge in the data center was there wasn't a choice, right? If you wanted something quick, your only choice 5 years ago was to go cloud native in a public cloud. Now the tools have come together. Enterprises finally have some choice, and I think it's really getting interesting. I mean, listen, I think the public cloud is incredibly interesting, and we researched that, but this notion of kind of having your cake and eat it too in a cloud model, just being on-prem and being able to, have the edge, have the public cloud, have your own private cloud, and even your own traditional IT, managing it the best you can, to me is super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the vision that we're all chasing, right? And you're right, it's not easy, but I think the value is very, very clear there. And so it really is about delivering the great hardware capabilities with the great software infrastructure management capabilities, along with those higher level tools, AI models, etc., and really giving customers that freedom of choice to land those where they want their applications.
For sure. And I do this for every one of my shows, and I know we didn't plan on this, but I'm going to give you guys the last word. What are your final words of wisdom for the CIOs out there who are watching this? And Michael, maybe we can start with you.
Well, take a look at AI as a huge opportunity that you better not miss in order to stay in the game.
Awesome.
And I would say, I think Michael made this point earlier, but I just want to reemphasize it. This notion from starting with what you have. Don't go and reinvent the wheel, but take what you already built out and make it better, and make it so much easier for your users to start accelerating their plans around AI. I think that's absolutely the fastest path to success.
Excellent. So everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this. And Michael and Kit, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you want to hear more about the accelerated data center, both NVIDIA and VMware are going to be at GTC 2021, November 8th through 11th. Sign up, it's free, and I am sure that it will be worthwhile. I think I've been to every GTC since it came out, maybe with the exception of a few years that I was working at another processor manufacturer. But with that, folks, I just want to thank you, Michael, and thank you, Kit, for really having a great conversation. I'm going to love this. I'm going to bronze this one. So with that, everybody have a great week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.